So it's legal in the court of law.
Mm. Well, not that we say anything too racy anyway, right? But so for today, we're talking about Madame Bovary up through part 2. I just wanted to apologize to you guys. I thought it's been a couple of years since I last read it, and I had it in my head that the parts were pretty evenly distributed, but part 2 was way longer than part 1. Yeah, so I should have given you part 2 from the Wednesday to Monday gap, right? But I should have looked at the book again before I made the schedule. So apologies that I made you read like that. I assigned like 100+ pages today. I did not. That was not what I intended to do. Okay, so if you didn't make it all the way through, I will forgive you this time. Okay, so. But next time we will finish it up through part 3. Part 3 is not as long as part 2, so so you have that going. Okay. Yeah, so pretty much everybody here today. We had Shane and Emily and Rebecca here the other day. Pretty much all you guys who are here with us today weren't with us the other day. I know we had a lot of power outages and all that kind of stuff. So I recorded a lesson the other day, but I'll repeat a couple of the things that we talked about. So one of the things that you guys need to know about this novel is that it's called a novel of realism. Okay, realism. Yeah, so just a reminder that, of course, last Wednesday we read romantic poetry, right? Poetry about nature and feeling the sublime and all this stuff. The realism was a response to that, right? It's a type of fiction that's meant to be based on ordinary experience, right? So books before this were mostly written, about really big subjects like Paradise Lost or something like that, right? This is a literature grounded in the real. And a lot of the reason why we had that is because the middle class was growing at this time, right? And the idea was they wanted to read books about people like themselves instead of larger than life superheroes and all this type of stuff. And so I went into more detail about that the other day, but just so you know, that's kind of the genre of book that we're in. Okay. And so today through part 2, we talked a lot the other day as well about Emma's feelings. Right, she feels bored with her life. She reads all these like romance novels and stuff like that. It's pretty much the same. Like if you go to Walmart and see like the romance novels with the cowboy on the front of the cover, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. That's the type of stuff that she's reading. Right, that's what gives her these lofty ideals about love, and all this type of stuff. And of course, part 2 today is about her affairs with 2 different men. Right? We have Leon. Through part 2, that she just kind of like has an emotional affair with Leon, right? She doesn't quite go all the way physically, at least just yet, right? At the end of part 2, you can kind of see it's probably going there, right? They meet back together in Paris, and the husband's like, "Sure, you can stay another day and watch the play with Leon." Right, so we have him. We also have Rudolph. Rudolph's just kind of a player, right? He's out to have a little fun, right? He doesn't really care about her feelings or anything like that. He's just a stereotypical player, right? As far as this type of thing goes. And of course, he leaves her at the end, right? He gives her that really bad breakup letter, and then she dramatically gets so ill that she's on her deathbed and all this stuff for a little while. So that's some plot summary of where we're at. Most, like I said, part 2 is mostly about that. There's also a lot of other stuff going on in part 2 that we'll talk about. We get an introduction to a lot more characters than we did in part 1. There's a lot more dialogue happening than there was in part 1. We have a bunch of people within the village, right? So we have the chemist, who's a character, right? This guy's actually practicing being a pharmacist without a degree, right? I don't know if you guys picked up on that detail. So he's kind of full of it with a lot of the stuff he says. Then we have other people, the local town grave digger, the guy who gets his club foot operated on, right? Of course, the husband messes up the surgery badly. The local priest, right? There's some satire in there about the Catholic Church, like the pharmacist doesn't like the priest. Right? You guys probably picked up on that. So a lot more local characters once they move to this new town at the end of part 1. And of course, we also have Emma's kid. Right? She has her daughter in this part of the book as well. And that might be a good place to start the conversation for today. What do you guys think about her as a mother? Right? We have several incidents, where with her and her child. Right? So I don't know. I'll open the floor. What do you guys think about her as a mom? Not much, right? She sucks.
That's like I said, that's what I kind of got from it. It doesn't seem like she does anything really. Is there some resentment towards her? Maybe I don't know. It just kind of seems like it.
Yeah, there's let's see. In chapter 3 of part 2, there's a good passage about that. This was right before.
Well, it said that she wanted.
Or say that again.
Didn't it say that she wanted a boy originally?
Yeah, that's actually what I'm getting ready to read here. So on page 77, part 2, chapter 3, it says she wanted a son. He would be strong and dark. She would call him Georges. And this idea of having a male child was a sort of hoped-for compensation for all her past helplessness. A man, at least, is free. He can explore every passion, every land, overcome obstacles, raise the most distant pleasures. But a woman is continually thwarted. Inert and pliant at the same time, she must struggle against both the softness of her flesh and subjugation to the law. Her will, like the veil tied to her hat by a string, flutters with every breeze. There is always some desire luring on, some convention holding her back. She gave birth one Sunday at about 6 o'clock as the sun was rising. "It's a girl," said Charles. So yeah, she's not too happy that she had a girl, right? We talked a lot of the other day too about the state of like the marriage economy at this time. Like, of course, we learned in part 1, Emma is sort of wed off by her father. That's what happened back in the day. People didn't really marry anybody they loved. Of course, fathers would pass down property to their sons, and daughters really didn't get anything, right? So the father, to get rid of the daughter as a burden, would pass along some property or money with the daughter just to marry her off. right? So he wouldn't be responsible for her anymore. So of course, Emma's kind of resentful, right? She doesn't want to have a daughter, for that reason. She wants to have a son who can teach, whom she can teach to be free and all this type of stuff. Yeah, that was right before she had the kid. We get lots of different incidents as well, with her actually being a parent in this part. Any of you guys remember one? What was one of the incidents with her as a parent with her daughter?
Wasn't at one time the little girl was trying to play with her or like try to call for attention, and she just kind of shoved her.
Yep, you're exactly right. That was one of the big moments, right? She gets back, she's upset at Leon over something, right? And then the daughter's like, "Mom, I love you," and she just like shoves the kid away. "Get away from me!" And like the kid like busts her head open, when she falls and stuff. So that's one of the big moments. Rebecca hit it. One of the things here, she doesn't really bond with the kid at an early age, right? She takes the kid to a wet nurse, right? Of course, you guys probably know that back in the day, women with money would often do that, right? They would take their newborns to a wet nurse who would nurse the kid instead of them. Okay, so that was a pretty common thing back then. But she takes the kid to a wet nurse, so she doesn't bond with the kid in that way. Then she's having all these affairs while the kid's growing up and stuff, right? So the poor kid's kind of a little bit of a victim here, right? If you want to look at it that way. I don't know. What do you guys think? Should we judge Emma for her lack of affection for her kid in this case, right? Or is she just not fit to be a mother, right? Some people might not just be fit to be parents. Right? She just happened to, by fate, to have a kid, right? But maybe she's just not meant to be. I don't know. Any thoughts as far as thinking about Emma in this way? Were you judging her? Were you like she sucks, or did you feel a little sympathy for her?
I didn't feel too much sympathy for her because of how she did her child, but I could see and relate to what she wants in life outweighing, she's already got so much resentment. It just seems like it would be easy for her to put her needs in front of the child. And as you said, wet nurses, they took a lot of the burden that would have been placed upon her if that wasn't the case. So there's a lot of things back in the day that actually helped that side of things as well, to allow her to be a little more selfish.
Yeah.
Rather than if she was, put all on herself to do it from the get-go without that kind of help, it would probably be a lot different in the story.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I think she liked the idea of having a child more than she actually liked having a child. Because she had a fantasy of how this was going to go. And of course, that's not what happened. And of course, she didn't take the good with the bad, she just took the bad. And she basically treated the wet nurse like a 24/7 nanny to watch over her kid until within a certain age, so where she can play with the kid maybe. But overall, I think she just had this idea. She had these expectations, and it didn't get met. I don't think she's a great mother, but
Right.
I don't blame her, but I do, in the sense of the way her mind works. It's understandable, but the fact that her mind works in that way is not very good.
Yeah, she has this high fantasy, right, of being a mom, but then like now it's time to change diapers, right? She's like, oh, F this. Right. That's kind of what's going on here a little bit, right? She can't handle the reality, the everyday reality of being a parent. Yeah, but you can probably, of course, you got to the end, Jason. You know how the story ends for the daughter. We won't spoil it today, but this book doesn't end happy in any respect. I'll just say that right now. You look like you got something on the tip of your tongue over there, Mackenzie. Any thoughts on Emma as a mother?
Oh, I think she's an awful mother.
Do explain.
Like, I agree with what you guys said. She did have this like idolized idea of being a mother, but when it came down to it, she just didn't fit the bill, you know.
Yeah, the father ends up becoming more of a mother to the kid than she is, right? Of course, she also has the servants looking after her, right? And so, again, she relies on other people to do that job for her. Maybe if she was a little less well off, like Jason said, right, maybe I think, yeah, maybe things would be a little different.
That or she would resent the child even more for depending on her.
Right, that could very well happen as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, I think she was more off depressed in a sense, but it wasn't because she had the baby, but it was more of she had this idea that everything was going to be smooth. She was almost going to have that relationship that her husband and his mom had. Like, I think she had that idea of this is what's going to be, this is what's going to save me. And that's not what happened. Like, even when her and the person she had the affair with, they were talking about running away. And he even brought up the child, and she was like, what? Oh, of course, we'll bring the child. Like, it was just such a second thought. And I'm like, that's not your child, is it? It raises the question of she really does put herself first.
Right. Yeah, Rebecca's exactly right. The Rudolph's like, what about your kid? She's like, huh? What? Oh yeah, the kid. We'll bring her along. Right, so yeah, again, putting yourself first, as Rebecca just said. It's a complicated matter, right? Yeah. I said some people are just different, right? So
Wouldn't it make more sense for her just to leave the kid? At that point, I feel like it would be probably best.
Yeah, but then you have to think of other people's opinions to her. So if she leaves the child, she is more likely to be the bad guy, the villain of the story. And of course, she fantasizes everything, and she's not the villain of the story. She's the damsel in distress. She's the victim. So I don't think she wants that opinion changed on her. So it would make more sense that she would leave the child, but not in her mind.
she actually wants to move out of the country with Rodolph, I think, just so she won't have to deal with anybody judging her once word gets around. And so, like I said, it's a complicated matter. It's only going to get more complicated in part 3. Maybe we can talk about her 2 love affairs here. Let's see what's going on with both of those. course, let's talk about Rudolph first, since he's the main. He's almost the antagonist of this novel, right? He's just out for fun and games, right? They didn't have Tinder back then, right? So this is what he had to do to get his kicks, right? So he sees her. From the moment he first sees her, he's like, "Yeah, she's not happy, right? I could give her 3 compliments and she'll be melt right in my hands, right? That's pretty much what he said, right? So they have a very long love affair, right? I think the time that passes in this part's 6 or 7 months or something like that, from the beginning of when it happens to the time that he leaves her, right? So what did you guys make of this character Rudolph, who's just kind of out to have fun, right? Was he a jackass for burning Emma here, right? Or did Emma just get too attached, right, to something fun? Right? What do you guys make of this?
He kind of reminds me of a good buddy of mine. I think he just thinks that about every woman. Like, oh, she's not happy. I could definitely, I can make her happy, you know. So I relate to that as far as just thinking of that aspect. It cracks me up. But yeah, I would think that she's probably a little naive to the actual situation at hand. You know, she has this one image in her head of how everything's going, and he's completely just feeding into that, you know, multiple times. So, but I just thought it was funny, even like when he almost screws it up, he can wheel it back. So that just kind of goes into how good he is too. I'm just gonna say that. I mean,
Yeah,
though she is very naive.
guy, right? He stops complimenting her after a while, right, to make her want it more. Right? He does that. He knows all the tricks. Right?
Yeah, when you first meet him, he has this conversation with himself of how everything's going to be planned. Like, what's he going to do to get her to be with him? And I'm reading this, I'm thinking, this is not going to end well. Because she's that naive girl that reads romance novels that expects love at first sight or whirlwind romance. And I'm thinking, that poor girl. But at the same time, why is she doing this to a point? Because we don't like this guy when we read him anyway. Because it's not like we don't know anything that's happening. Because it tells you what he's thinking. So it's not from her perspective. So we know what's going on. We know how he feels. We know what he's thinking, which makes it even sadder. Because he's happy that this is working out for him, that he's able to get this girl to fall in love with him just by playing this game. All because he just wanted to sleep with her.
Right. That's how he gets his kicks, right? The thrill of the chase, the thrill of sneaking around and getting what's not his, and all this stuff. Right?
Good buddy like that. Yep. Like once he's there, he's like, I'm done. You know, that's the way my buddy is. And it's why I immediately related that to him. I was just like, yep.
Well, I think that's a lot of human nature almost too, right? Just to chase after what you can't have. Right? A lot of people are very much like that. So yeah, do you guys hate Rudolph, or are you just like, he is what he is?
I don't really care for him just because I don't really believe in that kind of mindset. I mean, I understand it, and I kind of can relate to it in some situations, but I just feel like he's like overly persistent on this, on his goals, I guess. What I'm saying is I don't really agree with it, so I don't really care for him as the character, but I think it's a good wake up call for her, really. I think it would, maybe something she could learn from for sure.
I don't know if she'd learned from it. I think it was just a means for her to have a physical affair with later on Leon, if that's what happens. Because throughout the beginning of part 2, we're talking about how they spend a lot of time together, her and Leon. They talk a lot. They basically play games, have fun. And there was neither one of them were willing to take that extra step to make it more of a intimate relationship. And then he leaves, and here comes Rudolph, and that's the only thing he wants. So that's what he goes for. So I think that was more of a step for the author to write in order for her to overcome kind of like that obstacle. It makes it more believable if her and Leon have an intimate relationship after that.
Yeah.
It starts out as more of an emotional connection than it is a physical one.
Yeah, it shows her willing to take that extra step, right, from the emotional to the physical.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with what you're saying. It's that first step that is so hesitant for her, which also goes back into why he's so good at what he's doing, because he's still able to will it, even in kind of an unfortunate situation.
Yeah, it's kind of like she fell off the cliff. Like it was that one step to fall. But then, as in the middle of the affair, she still thought about Leon. Like even when she was with him, she thought about him every once in a while. So that connection wasn't more than just physical. I mean, even though she did play the part of a person whose heart is broken, but she still thought about Leon. So I don't know if she just overthought it or whatnot, because I'm pretty sure even she thought it was more of a physical attraction than it was a love.
They describe her love for his big blue eyes and all this stuff. If you guys remember, Leon's, that is, not Rudolph's. This is just a general question. This isn't about the book necessarily, but yeah, it is. Maybe some of you guys who haven't pitched in yet can. Now we're getting into some romance and relationship thoughts and opinions, right? Was it? Do you guys think that this emotional connection she gives to Leon, is that just as bad as what she does with Rudolph? Right? Is having that emotional affair even worse, or just as bad as the physical affair? What do you guys? Everybody's probably got a thought on this one, right? What do you? Maybe one of you guys who haven't pitched in yet. What's your thoughts? Is the emotional cheating just as bad as the?
I personally think that emotionally being attached and connecting to someone else is viewed as cheating as just as much as doing the dirty.
Right.
So, it would really hurt me if my boyfriend connected to someone else emotionally and couldn't connect to me that same way. So I really feel like that with both guys, she really was in the wrong either way. So
yes, with the emotional stuff, right? You might be cheating. You're cheating in your heart, right? If not your body. What are some other thoughts you guys might have on this? Shane, Keegan, Emily, Kirsten.
I
Thoughts
believe that
on this question?
Emotionally connect with someone, you're almost kind of falling more in love with that. Like I feel like she was falling more in love with, the Leon guy than, the Rudolph guy. It was just more, he was just trying to, get what he wanted. But, with the emotionally connection thing, I feel like it's worse to a point because she, is falling more in love with Leon to that point. So.
Right. So we seem to be coming to a consensus, right? That this emotional stuff's just just as bad. She does have that stronger connection with Leon, as Shane just said. Yeah, it's a shame, right? Just because her husband, we talked about this the other day too, that her husband does love her, right? He's devoted to her almost to worshipful almost, right? He notices that all these things are happening, and he just kind of overlooks it, right? Just because he loves her that much. This guy's the poor husband, right? He's just a boring guy. He goes home, does his job, wants to come home, chill out. But he's not passionate enough, right? Yeah, she has lots of outbursts at him in this part of the book too. Plus, we got Leon as our character here too, right? Of course, the emotional affair. He's the opposite of Rudolph, right? He's just this kind of like dreamy scholar, smart kid scholar type, right? Who reads a lot of books, reads a lot of poetry, and he can talk about such subjects. Granted, they're in a small French town, right? It's almost like the small towns we got around here. Right? They have one street in the whole town. Right, so her meeting someone like her was a big jolt as far as, oh, I actually have somebody I can talk to about stuff. Right, so even in their relationship, well, you might say that it starts out innocently enough, but here's someone all of a sudden who can actually talk to her. We should probably mention some of the other stuff happening in this part of the book, besides just her character and her affairs and all this stuff. We get all these other characters too, right? The chemist, everybody in the town. There's one of the great parts of this book is when they're having that town fair or whatever, right? That's when Rudolph first starts working on her, right? As far as breaking her down. But this book, I told you guys before, this book is a big satire almost of the middle class, like the bourgeoisie. That's what they're called. But yeah, of course, Rudolph is almost our voice of reason here, as far as like saying these people are absurd, right? So they have this agriculture fair, right? And he just sits up there and makes fun of all the like local people and all this type of stuff. Of course, our chemist, to find you guys the exact passage, our chemist is the main person here who's kind of full of crap as far as that goes, right? He's the person driving a lot of this nonsense that's going on around the town. So I have it written down. Yeah, it's in chapter 8 of part 2. Yes, so the chemist writes a letter to the local newspaper, right? He goes really exaggeratedly about what's going on in the town. Why these festoons, these flowers, these garlands, whither wasn't bound this crowd running like the waves of a raging sea under the torrents of a tropical sun spreading its heat under our fallow fields. Yeah, so there's a local town gathering, right? It's the greatest thing ever, right? So yeah, this book is also about the mundane here, right? These local characters are just full of it. Right? They conspire, they plot against each other. Right? It's just like how a small town is. everybody in a small town knows everybody's business, right? As far as what's happening. If you remember, the tax collector saw Emma going to Rudolph's house, right? She's like, "Oh shit, he's going to start talking to everybody in the town." So yeah, this book's also just this kind of satiric look at everyday, almost middle class life. I don't know. Did you guys see a little bit of this here? Even with how life is like even here, right? Just because we do live in a similar type of environment as Emma in this book, as far as like, you know, small town, farming, all this type of stuff. Was Flabeau right to ridicule and make fun of this type of environment? What do you guys think? Yeah, is Flabeau just saying, "Ha ha, those goofy country people," right? Is that what this book's doing, you think?
Well, it's not like he's completely wrong.
Right.
Yeah, because the character I really do not like is the chemist. I feel like he's so full of himself. Like in the beginning, like when we first meet him, he has this big old speech. I think it was him about religion when he was talking to the priest, and it says something about how he looked around to see what people's opinions were, like how they looked at him. And I feel like he just did that to get a raise out of people, because he was talking to a priest, and he was basically saying something about basically that he doesn't believe God would put down Jesus or something like that.
Yeah.
I was reading that, I'm thinking, the nerve you have. And he was one to stir up trouble. He really wanted to. I'm just like, I'm not sure I like you.
Yeah.
And then I just really don't like him.
Yeah. He's arguing about science, right? Because the priest is like, "God will heal you." The priest is, and the chemist is like, "No, he won't." Right? That's what science is for.
I'm not a big fan of the priest either, because at one point Emma tries to go to him
Yeah.
and have this conversation, and he just kept interrupting her, talking about other things, random things, and then she finally stopped, and she left. And he was like, "Okay, I got more important matters to go to."
Yeah, he's like, "Say hello to your hubby." All right, even though that's
Yeah.
what
Say hi for me. That was basically how the whole conversation went, and she actually wanted to talk to someone about it, because the priest, they're technically supposed to have confession and stuff and seek guidance. That's not what happened, because I think she was conflicted. I think it was around the time before Leon moved that she had this conversation with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he just brushed her off, because he was like, "Oh, poor innocent woman. You have nothing more going on in your head than if that knitting row was even than the last one." I don't know. He dismissed her quite much, like just brushed her off. I don't know. I really don't like most of these characters.
Yeah, he's like, "Silly woman, I have a church picnic to arrange. All right, so I don't have time to talk to you. I got to get this picnic going." I think that's kind of what happened there. Yeah, Rebecca's right. A lot of these characters are just not very likable. I think that we're getting here. Flabeau was actually arrested once this book was published. Right, we're in France. France doesn't have the freedom of speech that they might now, but at that time, I don't know. But at that time, they didn't. He was actually brought to court for defaming the French people here. Right? Yeah, they thought that he was, not to mention also the sexual content and stuff in the book too. Right? He was brought to court for this book as far as inciting negative opinions about the country and the middle class and all this type of stuff, trying to dismiss nationalism, right? Where these people suck. Fun little fact for you. This book actually got Flabeau into trouble.
Yeah, well, when I was looking for that on Amazon, there was a sample that you could play, and I guess it was kind of like the introduction, like in the prior books that we've read. You know, how they give you a brief history lesson on. So it was telling me all that. He went to court and he stood up and he was, saying his side. And I think he was acquitted for that, wasn't he?
Yeah, he wasn't charged.
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting. I listened to it was all it was a sample of what you would get if you were to rent that audiobook or whatever off of Amazon. But it went through the entire detail of him writing the book, what it's about, and the trouble he got in after that. It was kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah, it's funny because even the French, the French novel at this time compared to the English novel, you can probably see this here, but it's light and day. Like the French were much more open as far as sexuality and all this type of stuff went.
Yeah, I mean, throughout the book, he mentions Voltaire and like Rousseau and stuff, and these are the revolutionary type of writings and stuff from these people, and that's where they got a lot of their like French Revolution stuff from. That's where we got a lot of our Revolution stuff from, was from those writings. So I don't know if it's post French Revolution or if it predates it.
Yeah,
But it's enough to where these men have writings and they're actually out in public. So I don't know as far as free speech. I just know that it was probably more contradictory that he had those people in there. And as people that was mentioned throughout the book, because it talks about how Emma likes to read, and then there's this library or something that this man has, and he says he has Voltaire and other types of people, like revolutionary speakers and stuff. And like it wasn't frowned upon except for when I felt so sorry for her, but when Charles's mother brought upon the idea that she shouldn't read. Like I felt so sorry for her. That was like the only time I really felt sorry for her.
Right.
Because he took away her escape. And I'm pretty sure that made her not like him even more. Because that was her means of entertainment. That was what she did all day. But her mother-in-law was like, but that's not godly to read, stuff like that. I just felt so sorry for her.
And this was actually a very common fear in the 19th century, right? That these books it's almost just like the argument about video games and stuff today, right? These books can corrupt impressionable young people, right? And it's going to cause them to do, bad things. Like these romance novels are going to cause girls to get the wrong idea about love and all this type of stuff, right? So if Flabeau's kind of going along with that popular sentiment, right? Still, like I said, that's still a thing today, right? With movies, TV shows, video games, and stuff like that. The power of fiction to corrupt you, right? Make you ungodly. That's what I'm doing in this class. I'm corrupting you, right? So I don't know. What do you guys think about these arguments? At least about literature. Rebecca said she didn't like the fact that he took books away from her, but it's hard to argue here that the books are giving her bad impressions, right? Fantasies and not realities. Right? So do books and other types of media corrupt impressionable young children or young adults? What do you think? You're a parent, Jason. What do you think? What do you think about this? Are you
Well,
careful with what you expose them to?
well, no, I definitely do believe that there's some games and some books that definitely do have influence on them, but I think more or less it's more on the guidance that you lead your kids into when you're, to make sure that they realize that's not a reality. That is an entertainment of sorts. Just like a good movie, is not real. It's entertainment. So in this case, it's a little bit different because she's a lot older. She's past the guidance period. So for me, I would lean to more. It's more of an escape for her in her reality rather than making this her reality. Even though she does take a lot of those ideas and she does expect those to happen in real life, it's just all fantasy. Like Rebecca said, I agree with her 100% on that. I guess you could say they influenced, but I definitely don't think taking them away was the best move. Furthermore, I don't believe taking advice from the evil stepmom or evil law was very good advice either, because they never did, see eye to eye really. So I don't know. There's a lot of questions right there, but as far as my kids go, there's sometimes that I feel that the games are a little too much. I would say Grand Theft Auto is one that I think is a pretty influential game that I don't necessarily think kids should be, I know you're 18, you can buy them for your kids, but I was against it when my kid got it and it wasn't my choice. So,
Yeah. I mean,
there's a lot of an adult content in that game. It's,
yeah.
I think a lot of it is from the parents or teachers, like how they go about it, because a lot of times it can be very influential and in a negative way. But it also lays upon the responsibility of a parent or a teacher or a guardian to let that child or that kid or that teenager to know what's right, what's wrong. I mean, I have a brother who kind of sifts through certain things with his kids, and I mean, I understand it 100% because they're like 10 and down, so they're very young. But I'm also that type of person where I wasn't forbidden to read like Harry Potter and stuff. I mean, my father's a preacher and he read it, and I read all kinds of books, like fantasy and stuff. And I don't let it necessarily cloud my judgment in a way, because I feel like some kids are more impressionable than others with their state of mind and stuff. But overall, I don't think it should be like banned. It should be treaded lightly, maybe, but not necessarily banned.
Yeah, this is a relevant question, right? Every time one of these big mass shootings happen, right, one of the first things is just that certain people do is blame the video games, right, for causing people to become violent and stuff. We talked a little bit about this the other day, but the Columbine shooting in the 90s, right, they blamed the game Doom on that, right? Or of course, Justin's not with us today, but he was just like, you shoot demons in the game. How's that bad, right? So, but yeah, that is one of the first go-tos. It's this evil media that's causing people to do these nasty things. Right?
I think Duke Nukem was a lot worse. I mean,
than Doom.
But no. Well, so I'll pose this question. So my stepdad gets aggravated when my nephew plays Fortnite. He is 6. And I have to say there's times that I have to get on to him because I'll play Fortnite with him. And, he'll say, I like killing or something. He just has it out of context. But he knows that gives people an uproar. And that's what he's like a little bit of ADHD. So he's always looking for that extra attention. But when he says that, I get mad at him. I'm like, no. We don't talk like that. And he knows that, so. But that's the part of it that in my head I go back to. I don't really like hearing that from a 6-year-old and my nephew. I killed that guy. I get why it sounds bad. But I like, once again, I think as long as it's within the right, context of how you say it, and like I said, it ain't just because he says it, we scold him. I don't want him to think that that's a normal thing to state, or that's the pleasure you get out of it. It's the competition of the game.
Right.
Playing for, not the fact that we're killing people. That's definitely the wrong message. But that could easily just be a scary movie. You could easily say Friday the 13th was why some of these things happen. And I would be pressed to think that some of the murders that happened in real life were not based off movies. I'm sure they got ideas from movies as kids. So
Yeah, if you wanna look up something fun, you should look up some of the Siskel and Ebert reviews of movies like Friday the 13th. Right? They really hated them. They thought that the movies were corrupting young teenagers to go have sex and stuff like this. Right? Right. So if you wanted some,
Well, GTA is actually banned in Singapore because of something that happened there because of an attack, an attempted murder. So it's completely banned there. You're not allowed to own it at all. Anyone. Because they cited that as their influence for the crime.
it's crazy.
But see, that's my argument on that side of things. Then you can no longer watch Scarface. Godfather's out. You need to start banning a lot more things because those games early on were based off those movies.
Mm-hmm.
Vice City is basically Scarface. So when you go into the aspect of the video games, they're basically just ripping the movie entertainment system. So yes, you play and it's a little more involved, but if Braylon watched my 6-year-old nephew, if he watches Scarface, that's just as bad if he could actually end it than a game, in my opinion. So that's always my argument is if you're going to start that system of banning things, then there's a lot more bans that will have to come, and then where are we at that point?
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, right? Once we go down this, we're going to go down this path of no return.
I mean, I kind of blame it towards more of the person who does the act. But then again, if we're saying this, then you should just ban alcohol in order to prevent DUIs. You know what I mean? Like, it's the person or the mind that does it. Because when you're playing a video game, no offense, all you're really doing is pushing a button to reload the gun. You're not necessarily learning how to reload it, learning how to throw grenades. You just push the button and boom. That's what happens. I mean, like, language-wise, some of those games might not be more appropriate because school system. Last thing we need is for a little 4-year-old going around saying the F word.
Which happens, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have ever played a lot of games online, but like if you play Call of Duty or something, you'll always have like a 6-year-old shouting curse words at you.
Yes.
Quite
All the
delightful.
time. They're like 12 and they're calling you names and you're just like, and the voice is cracking. They're really high pitched. You're like, we know you're 9. What are you doing?
Yeah. But like, you also have to think if, like, let's say you're watching like rated R movies and they say like the S word a lot. Like maybe a week after, you're going to catch yourself accidentally saying it if you're trying to prevent yourself from saying it. I think it's more about control than it is anything. Because, like, I don't really say curse words, but if I watch a rated R movie, like 2 or 3 of them in a row, I'm going to accidentally say something or catch myself almost saying it. It's just, it influences. It's just a matter of control.
I like the idea of banning alcohol. I'd be interested in seeing how many DUIs were actually when they did have the ban on alcohol.
But then again, you also had speakeasies in the 20s because of it. So either way, it's not going to decrease that much. Maybe
Right.
more so, but not a lot. Because speakeasies.
Yeah, I was going to say, too, the same arguments made today, not about novels, but about stuff like teen magazines and stuff, right? Because they show all these young, skinny girls and all this type of stuff. And there's a lot of studies about that even causes young girls to develop eating disorders and things like that as well. So another type of media like these magazines and talk and like these shows and stuff that cause this type of thing too. Yeah, so the corrupting power of media, right? Whether it can or doesn't, or control.
To be clear, though, my nephew is not playing Grand Theft Auto. That is not allowed. Like, that's terrible.
Good to hear.
I don't like my kids playing it, so, and I got a 16-year-old, so.
16's the brain's a little more developed, right, than it is at 8 or even.
Well, yeah, he hears a lot worse at school, I'm sure, and I'm sure he's watched a lot worse on computers and phones, so it's not as bad because he can keep it in context, but you got a 5 or 6-year-old running around talking about things going on, I don't even want to get into it, but things going on in that game, that would be pretty bad. I think that would far outweigh the little bit I killed this person, or could be a lot worse.
Yeah, we talked about that when we talked about Shakespeare. K-12 system's a little too naive about what people hear and don't hear, I think. Is there any other threads I wanted to talk about? Oh, yeah. I wanted to also mention the character, the guy who sells Emma all the stuff. I don't know if you guys remember this character, but he's pretty much going around saying, "Hey, Emma, I'll give you all this stuff. You don't have to pay for it right now. It's going to go on your credit." Right? Of course, there wasn't an elaborate credit system back then, so she doesn't really know what she's getting herself into. But we get this a couple of times here too. He sends her the bill, and she's like, "Oh no, right? How am I going to pay this with interest?" So this character is it's going to be playing a central part of the story moving forward as well, because Emma's going to get more and more extravagant with her tastes, with gifts that she's buying and stuff like that. So
Doesn't like this mostly happen after the surgery fail? Like like they were needing money and stuff, and like they were having a hard time getting on. I feel like that's when it happened.
Yeah, right when they were broke, that's when he came around wanting to collect his money, right? And he's already noticing stuff that's weird. Like he's like, "Well, I'll take the riding crop back that you bought from your husband for your husband." She's like, "No, no, no. Right, I bought it for Rudolph, not my husband." In her head, right? So he's going to start taking advantage of her. I think that's pretty easy to see from here forward. Of course, I've told you guys before, the money lender trope is a pretty common one. But this is a different type, right? He's playing on her consumer greed and all this type of stuff. If things are going to go, you think things are going south now? Just wait till next Monday. Her character is going to go to a very, very deep low as far as what happens to her. I think Jason knows what I'm talking about. What she ends up doing.
It's intense. It's very intense. Yeah. Like I said, with listening to it, I still feel like I miss a lot of context. The lender, I don't recall it being. I recall the situations of him asking for the money, but I don't really recall. It was hard for me to siphon when she was actually getting gifts. I remember the trough gift. I remember that because of that aspect, but other ones I just don't really recall too much about it.
Monsieur Leroux, that's this character's name.
Leroux, yeah. I remember him being introduced, but I think more or less when I'm listening to the audiobook too, I get complacent because I'm wanting more of the juicy part of the story rather than I don't care about her spending. I'm more interested in like what the heck's going to happen between them two and how's he not know, and so.
Like when I listen to audiobooks, sometimes I'll just play a mindless game. That way I'm more likely to listen to it and not wander off thinking like something mindless like Candy Crush or something. Because it's the same thing with like driving and listening to an audiobook. You're still doing something, but you're actively listening and not necessarily daydreaming. That's if you're getting lost, that might be an option.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about going and mowing after this and re-listening to it, and then, like I said, this evening, start reading into the actual copy of it. That way, I got this sound going in my head, so I already got the story to follow along with, and now I can just put the actual words into it.
Yeah, that's the thing with Flabeau, right? Which we talked about the other day. Is all this whole book is elaborate description, right? He's a painter as far as what he's doing with these characters, right? So every little thing he talks about is a sketch as far as who these people are, and like we said the other day too, he doesn't comment on these characters really, except that really weird part at the beginning of part 1, right, where the narrator uses the first person.
Go away, I'm Tucker.
I still got to figure out what's happening with that. I'm going to look something up on it for you as far as that very first pages of the book, what the narrator's doing there. But yeah, the narrator doesn't intervene, right? He's a painter. He's giving you all these scenes.
It was kind of just like an odd transition.
Yeah.
Like it was just like schoolroom. Let's talk about Charles.
Yeah, if you guys noticed, he goes in super in depth all the time, right? He'll describe the dusty furniture and all this type of stuff, right? He paints. That's why Flabeau is still one of the most well-known novelists ever, right? Just because he was so skilled at painting a picture with words for the reader.
That's what I told my son last night. I was like, you can kind of just imagine it, can't you? And he was like, yeah. He's like, it just paints a picture of what's going on. And he was like, yeah, I can follow right along with it.
Yeah, this translation works really well too. I'm glad I picked this particular edition. It's a good one. Yeah, if any of you guys ever take any future English classes, I know Emily's one too. She's going to be an English major. But yeah, this book's talked about all the time. Right? You'll probably hear about this book at some other point in your life after this class is over, just because it is that much of a book.
I'm making my schedules a day for Concord. I'm calling after this. So.
What is it?
I said I'm making my schedule for Concord after this conference call. So hopefully everything's situated there where I can double major.
Yeah, I was going to tell you guys too. If you're coming back from work classes, in the fall or summer, feel free to talk to me about it if you want. I can help you come up with your schedules and stuff too. I'm happy to do that. Okay, so you might just use your advisor, right? But if you'd rather talk to me, I can help you out too. Okay. So we'll call it a day for that. I think we had a good conversation. So next time, the end of this book. Don't forget too that this poem imitation's coming up too, right? I think it's going to be due next week. All right, so if you haven't started on your poem imitation yet, you might want to get a move on with that, right? Like I told you guys before, I don't really care if the poem's good. All I care about is, does it have the rhyme and meter, right? Maybe it'll be good too. I still haven't, forgive me, I still haven't posted the examples. Yeah, but I will do that today while it's on my mind. Okay, so you'll see some example poems besides just the ones you have in a book. You'll see ones other students have written too. Yeah, don't forget about that. It's coming up next week, I think. Okay. Then after that, we'll do short paper 2. A week or 2 after that. As far as the final exam in this class goes, yeah, I might just give you guys the option. You can take whatever grade it is you have, make the final optional. I'm thinking about doing something like that. If we do a final, it's probably going to be an essay of some sort. I'm not going to give you a test since it's kind of impossible to do over Blackboard without cheating and stuff, right? So it's no point in it. So I'm probably going to give you the choice. You can either do a short essay if you're not happy with your grade, or just take whatever grade it is you got already. Okay, so of course I'm pretty up to date on this class. This is the only class I'm teaching I'm up to date on as far as grades. So the Blackboard grading isn't correct though. I haven't configured the grade book on there. So if you want to know your grade or something, shoot me an email and I can give you a percentage. Okay, so I just wanted to tell you that too. But with that said, if there's no other questions, we will call it a day. All right, so you guys take care. Enjoy your weekend coming up. Enjoy the last part of this book.
See you guys later.
See you later.
Goodbye.